Hey, everybody, welcome to episode 145 of the Masterclass. My name is Cam Brennan, and I am joined, of course, by the lovely, the talented, the wise
Mm, I don't
Dave
know about
Hogue.
that.
What's up?
Well, all kinds of things. So, actually went to church to hear my future son-in-law do the sermon at
Oh, really?
yes. So, and he is part of a ministry to Haiti. It's called LQVE, and I don't know, he did a really fantastic job of just talking about what mission should be like, what it should be about, and what it should be like, and what it shouldn't be, and that was kind of fun to see my daughter getting ready to marry somebody that is passionate about God and missions, and is actually kind of humble about it as well.
Well, and for a young person, that is not necessarily the norm, I should say.
Yeah,
I know he's what, 22?
yeah, probably 22, 23.
I was 22 and I got married, and I was not very humble.
I don't
I,
think I
I
was
thought I had a
either.
lot going on for me.
Yeah, so
That's cool.
just
I guess I didn't realize that is he a Bible major? Ministry, something?
yeah, I think he's about um developing leaders, indigenous leaders versus, and that's kind of what his whole talk was, is the Messiah not that what one of his points was about being kind of having the Messiah complex when us affluent Americans go to somewhere like Haiti and
You mean white people?
white people. Yeah, that's fair.
We're either gonna save the day, and if you don't want us to, we're gonna take it from you.
Yeah, and so he just did a good job of just kind of talking about how smart Haiti, that's what he was talking about, was Haiti, the people of Haiti really are, and just what they really do on a shoestring budget. And I guess they have a guy that's kind of an architect slash engineer that does a lot of the buildings with them, and does not have a degree in it, and is wise in terms of using the materials they have available to them. And so yeah, it was good to, you know, hear his perspective and not be appalled by it.
That's a plus.
Yeah. And so yeah, he did a good job. That was fun.
Well, good.
Yeah. Kind of a new chapter that I don't know. He doesn't teach a lot. He doesn't preach on Sundays because I don't think that's so his thing, but he did a good job. So it was kind of fun to get to hear that and his heart on that. And then we went to Top Golf that night and
It's fun, isn't it?
it was a good time. So we celebrated Wilby's 13th birthday at Top Golf, which
Did he have fun?
he had a great time, but there's nothing like having a kid with cerebral palsy that does not have great balance, like
Oh gosh.
swinging a golf club 5 feet away from where there's a drop off and a net to catch him should he fall off the end. It's like
So you
every
guys
time.
were on, like, the upper deck?
Oh, yeah, so, you're trying to play it cool and, like, it doesn't bother you, but, like, every time he was swinging, it was like, "Oh, please don't go stumbling off the end," and but he did
Uh,
well, and we had fun, and so, yeah, it was a good Sunday. So,
there you go.
yeah.
I've been to Topgolf once,
Yeah,
and of
that's was
course,
our first time.
me and me and the only other kid that were, like, knew how to swing a golf club got into the who could get the most
Oh, yeah, yeah.
12 pointers, whatever the back is.
Uh-huh.
And then the kids that had, like, looked worse than Charles Barkley swinging a golf club beat both of us because
Oh, that's
they were just
yeah.
hitting them wherever and like, "Oh, like, here's a little two-pointer, here's a five-point," just, like, out of sheer dumb luck. It's like when you're doing, like, the bracket pool at work and someone picks the winners based on their mascots or colored jerseys and they
Yeah.
beat you. Come on, but I'm so much better at this.
Well, and I
No, no,
actually
no, you're
think
not.
I think they kind of so the kind of the generic game that you're talking about, I think they have it actually kind of designed to where
Mhm.
I think if you just are consistent and hit it, you're actually gonna do better in the long
Well,
run.
and that's what makes it fun for everyone is you don't have to be
Exactly.
good at
Yep.
golf. You
Yep.
just have to be willing to go have a good time and be okay with looking goofy if
Yep.
you don't know how to swing a club because it doesn't matter. It levels a playing field.
Yeah. Well, and I think every one of us missed our swing, missed the ball once, except for Wilby. He was pretty consistent with hitting the ball every time. We all had,
Really?
yeah,
Good for him.
yeah, and he swings one handed, and he did a great job. So yeah, it was a fun Sunday. Kind of one of those like didn't really know it was going to happen, and then when it was over, it was like that was pretty cool. So
Very exciting.
yeah,
I don't have any fun stories.
you have anything?
Not that my life isn't fun and exciting and, all that stuff. Just been so tired.
That's what happens when you give up caffeine.
Well, yeah, that that is true. But
All other factors as well.
it's for the good, Dave. I'm giving my body the chance to relax, recuperate, rejuvenate, other things. I don't know. I'm running out of words, Dave. This is a bad way to start a show. If I'm already running out of words, maybe it's a good thing if I talk less on this episode. I don't know. Probably won't happen. I'm bad at shutting my mouth. Should we jump into the scriptures?
Sure.
And a quick note to our listeners: we're going to read from chapter 12. We are well aware that we ended last episode at the end of chapter 10. We just kind of didn't want to talk about chapter 11, so we're not going to do it.
Yeah, just wasn't feeling it.
So, you know, sorry. But we're going to start in chapter 12. So, David, would you do the honors, please?
Yeah, so we're gonna just do the first couple verses. Romans 12 ESV. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Present your bodies as a living sacrifice.
I know.
Man, yeah, there's a lot there. Especially kind of, as you mentioned, like with the caffeine, but like, so it's like no pop, no coffee, no caffeinated tea, also no alcohol. And this is by no means me like saying, "Oh, feel bad for me. I can't have any of the good stuff." But like the concept of, for me, finally treating my body not like trash.
Yeah.
And it isn't even necessarily because of this verse. This just happens to be timely, as God often is with his like, oh, it just so happened that this
Yeah.
happened in the scriptures, or you know, I don't know, the fact that the Bible is active, right,
Yep.
and can meet you at the right time for certain things to click on perhaps a different level, and to think of. I've always kind of thought of my body as like a tool for me. Like it's mine. It's my body.
Oh
I get to
yeah.
do what I want with it because it's my body. And now I sound like never mind. Backtrack from that comment. Um, I almost offended some people. But like this concept, like one, it's my body. I can do what I want with it. Two, there's not really consequences for treating my body how I want to treat it,
Mm-hmm.
which is like the most ludicrous thing you could think, right? But I thought that way for a long time because I was young and your body's fairly forgiving when you're healthy and young.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but just thinking like, you know, present your bodies as a living sacrifice, like your body is, a temple, right, for the Holy Spirit to dwell in. And looking back on how, I've lived most of my life, like the last decade, like that has certainly not been true in, how I've treated my body. And I never really thought that that was a bad thing until recently.
Hmm.
And it was health stuff that caused me to go, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not Superman. Maybe I do have to take care of my body, and maybe my organs aren't made out of Kevlar, but are actually made out of what organs are made out of. And if they don't get what they need and aren't treated correctly,
Yeah.
maybe my heart's going to explode. Like this for me is very timely in the sense that I am coming full circle to no, like you're about to turn 33 in a couple days. That doesn't make you an old man, but it doesn't make you a young man either. Like there are certain you're like my body will be changing, more probably in the next 10 years than maybe it has in the last 10. And even from just like a selfish perspective, I have to start taking care of it if I still want to be here in like 20 years, right? Then you throw in this whole idea of God calling us to present our bodies as a living sacrifice. So, like, what we do and how we care for our bodies is a representation of our willingness to sacrifice for God, right?
Hmm.
And if I strolled up right now, he'd be like, all you sacrificed is a smaller pair of pants, pal. Like, what are you doing? So, I don't know. I realize that probably wasn't a great point or anything, but that's just kind of what's rattling around in my head right now. So, sorry if that was not sensible.
Well, and I think no, I think it was very sensible, and it kind of one of the things that I frequently come back to is me in my life. There are very few things that I deny myself, and granted, I'm not talking like you know extreme, lavish. I don't even know what the word I'm looking for is. But there are very few things that I deny myself just in terms of day in and day out. So it's like if I want a cup of coffee, I go get a cup of coffee. I
Yeah.
either make it on my counter or I go to the store and I get it. If I'm craving ice cream, I go get ice cream. If I'm craving a hamburger and fries, I go get hamburger and fries. Like very rarely do I go, "Oh, I'm having that craving. I'm just going to choose not to do that." And it's just kind of the world we live in of if you want something, you just kind of go get it. And that was just for me was kind of one of those just realizations of it's a very little thing, but I think it's something that you can do is just practicing that I'm going to deny myself this and not constantly just anytime I have a want, just go and satisfy that want. And I know it's not real like when you think about being a living sacrifice, that's probably not the first thing that comes to mind.
No, but you gotta start
But
somewhere,
you do
right?
have to start somewhere, and I think there's something very practical about what you're saying in terms of just we need to learn to deny ourselves on occasion, and that may just be for a season.
Mhm.
It may be you may just one day this is the day I stop consuming alcohol, and never again the rest of your life do you consume alcohol. And for everybody it's different, but I think there's just sort of a having an awareness of what it is that I'm doing with my body and why I'm doing it. Um, and we're talking about basically food and drink, but there are people that deal with, alcohol and drugs, and being a living sacrifice is to choose not to do, narcotics, not to smoke marijuana, not to do those things. And um, again, it may seem like a really obvious thing, but if it's what you're used to and how you've lived your life, taking that moment to sort of go, I'm going to change and I'm going to make an effort. And I think it is. I think it's twofold. I think one, it's being honoring of God and the body and that He's given us, and two, I think it's okay to do it for ourselves on a degree because I think we're honoring God by doing that, and being respectful to this vessel that He's given us. So,
Hmm. So yeah, there's definitely the what we put into our bodies part, right?
yep,
Then
that's
there's also the what
we
we
do.
do with
Yep,
our bodies part,
yep,
or what we don't do, right?
sure.
Because the next part is after presenting our bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. So it's interesting that our bodies are our spiritual worship
Sure.
because I would not put those two things because my body is this physical thing, right?
Mhm.
But according to, this and other places of scripture, it's also the house for my spirit, my soul, the thing that God really cares about, right?
Mhm.
And so it's the kind of like baptism is like the outward expression of an inward conviction. The way that we present our bodies to God is the outward representation of what's inside of it.
Mhm.
And I've never thought about this passage that way before at all. Why would my body be my spiritual worship? Well, I am presenting my physical being that houses my spiritual being, right? In a way that is supposed to be holy and acceptable to God. And so that means what? Sexual purity,
Mhm.
and that like we talked already about what we put into it or don't put into it, how we treat it. Um, yeah, that's just I've never thought it's just right there, which is your spiritual worship. But I never saw the juxtaposition of our body and our spirit like that before. So
Yeah, and that's so like, I often think about sin and temptation, or even what I wanna do and what I don't wanna do, and when do I serve and when do I not serve. I To me, it's such a s all that is so cerebral, it's so much in my head in terms of making the decision to do something or not do something, but there is something about the physical body that actually gets played into that of, when I part of the reason why, like, sometimes maybe I don't wanna go to church or I don't wanna serve in the children's ministry or whatever, there's an element of I have to physically get my butt up out of the couch, out of bed, get into a car, drive across town, and go do something. And again,
hmm
I'm not trying to make this more noble than it is, but I often don't really kind of embrace that idea of, while I'm kind of in my head making the decision, what I'm making the decision is about is, well, I just want my body to just lay here. I want to do nothing, but I've got to physically kind of put forth some effort, or for that matter, exercising. I mean, that's another one of,
yeah.
you know,
Well,
it's so mental until you actually do it, and then it becomes very much a part of the physical body.
you know what they say. The hardest part of going to the gym
Getting there,
is going to the
going to
gym.
the gym.
Once you're
Once you're
there,
there, yeah.
you're there, so you might as well work out. It's actually getting to the gym that is the
Yeah.
hardest part because it's that mental hurdle of
Yeah.
I hate working out. I don't want to work out. I'm really comfortable right now. I have to change. Then I have to go. Then I have to do the workout. Then I got to come home and shower. And, oh, it's just not worth it. And it's like after all that, you could already be at the gym, you know, and the same goes for this, these concepts we're talking about of like our the hardest part about you know any change is the mental inertia it takes to initiate the change to start it. Most people don't like change, especially when it means less comfort,
Right. Oh yeah.
or looking in the mirror and going, "Oh yeah, I guess I do justify a lot of sin in my life," or whatever,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
A lot of the things that are good for us often come with a uh, an exchange that you know is difficult. But the difficult things are generally good for us.
Mhm.
Um, I'm reading a book right now called Rediscovering Holiness
Oh, yeah.
by one J.I.
Jay.
Packer, who I will probably not meet, but would love to. I would not like him to join the class of Dallas Willard, which is authors that I really wanted to meet that I won't get the chance to this side of heaven. But
And there you'll have an eternity, so
I hope he's a willing listener because I want to, or I should say, I should be a willing listener. Be like, hey, Ji, hey, here's decaf coffee. Let's chat. um, but he starts off this book, um, a couple pages in, and he's got three truths that I read through and I summed up. First truth is holiness must be learned.
Yeah.
Like it is something that we have to learn to desire, learn to seek out, and then learn to work out in our lives. Like
Yeah.
it's something that we can see, but it is something that we have to learn to make a regular part of our daily lives. And he compares it to working out and exercising. He's like, because I was really bad at it, like really, 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 really bad at gym class. He's like, I was awful. All the other kids were having fun, and what was easy for them was really hard for me. He's like, but it was good for me because it made my body like you know do things.
Yeah.
Like it was there was a benefit to it, even though I hated it.
Yeah.
So yeah, the first truth is holiness must be learned. The second one is learning it is hard, but that's the point. Like it's hard for a reason. He says, as pushing ahead on the path of prayer and holiness is a prime form of spiritual warfare against sin and Satan, so it is an educational process that God has planned and programmed in order to refine, purge, enlarge, animate, toughen, and mature us. By means of it, he brings us progressively into the moral and spiritual shape in which he wants to see us. So, like, this is the, iron sharpens iron, or you can't refine gold without a fire. Like, the, the process of learning holiness that is going to piss Satan off and cause spiritual warfare in your life, right? God wants this because it strengthens us, it refines us, it, rough, knocks off the rough edges and, brings us into uh, the the shape that he wants us. And you even think of like, oh, he is the potter, I am the clay. Like the process of turning a lump of clay into some sort of, pot or vase or sculpture, like that clay goes through some stuff,
Oh,
my
yeah.
dude. Like
Yeah.
it's rough. Um, the third one is reliance upon and closeness to God is the only way to get through the process. He says, fundamentally, the factor that makes the difference in this journey is neither one's intelligence quotient, nor the number of books one has read, nor the conferences, camps, and seminars one has attended, but the quality of the fellowship with Christ that one maintains through life's vicissitudes,
Wow.
which is a super fancy word for crappy times. Doesn't matter how smart you are, it doesn't matter how educated you are, it doesn't matter how many J.I. Packer books you've read. The only thing that's going to keep you through or get you through the process of holiness and sanctification, as Paul calls it, is a strong relationship with God. And I think that's kind of the point of why holiness is hard and why the process is difficult, is because your option is to lean into it and chase God harder through it, or to back off and say, I'm good out here, man. You guys have fun in that little mosh pit. I'm just gonna get my popcorn and my recliner and just watch. right? But there's like there's logic in the sense that, you know, if God is going to pull us through this, he we have to make the choice. And it always with God is a choice, right? We have to make the choice to either lean into it and push through and kind of show God that like we have the metal,
Yeah.
or we back off and just say, nah, I'm good.
Yeah,
So, anyways,
and I think even in that, there may be a it we're not, like, day in and day out, you're not always going to make the right choice. And you may have weeks, months, or years where you kinda go, "Nah, no." But then it's like you just you can't give up on it. You can't give up on God. There's that desire to know him and to be intimate with him and to understand him better. And so, um, yeah, I think it's we're definitely gonna have some ups and downs and peaks and valleys, and but it is definitely that long pursuit of him. Um, I think we can there's an element of you can become a little bit familiar. And when it's familiar, it's easy to kind of decide, I know this, I don't need it. And then um I don't know that you said directly this, but the trials and the tribulations come, and it's in those moments of you go, okay, God, I know I need you. I know you're the one that gets me through this, and um, so yeah, it's certainly that um, discipline over the course of a lifetime. And I guess I would even kind of maybe even put myself in that place of just um, not complacent with God and really not wanting him, but I feel like I'm in a renewed place of desiring to pursue him stronger again that I haven't had in a while. And um I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So
I agree. Yeah, I've really been enjoying this book. Started listening to it on Audible,
uh-huh.
and the guy that reads it is quintessentially British. British. I can't even talk. He doesn't call it holiness. He calls it holiness. To be holy for the Lord. It's yeah. And he says issues, which just makes my day. I'm sorry, I can't deal with your issues. I must go be holy. It's a really bad, really, really bad version of how he sounds. So I bought it with the intent of like reading along, but then I realized I only ever listen to it when I'm on in the car. So obviously, following along in a book while driving is a horrible idea. So I'm like, I find myself reading the parts of the book I've already listened to,
Uh-huh.
which is kind of helpful though, because I'm like, oh, I remember this part in the book, and then or in the audiobook, and I'm like, oh, I wanted to highlight this section or whatever, because that's
Yeah.
like the downside with audiobooks. Like there's a clip function
Yeah,
in
it's not the
Audible, but
same.
again, I'm driving a car. I don't want to fuss with no. I want this 30 seconds. That's 2 seconds off from what Like I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
Um, but it is kind of helpful and weird to both be like I'm 2 chapters ahead in the audiobook than I am in the physical book, but that kinda gives my brain time to, like, process, and then seeing it a second time, I'm like, oh, because you catch things when you can read it, because you can, reread and see
Yeah.
connections on the page. Um, but yeah, totally not off topic, but, I would highly recommend checking the audiobook or the physical book out, or I guess the ebook if you're into that thing. Get your Kindle.
Mhm.
All right. So verse 2 says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. All right. Do not be conformed to this world. Well, that's easy. I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
No.
That was a joke. That's what the world wants us to be, right? It's conformed.
Yes.
There's he quotes J.C. Ryle, who is an old Anglican bishop from the 1800s, and he says that a holy man will endeavor to shun every known sin and to keep every known commandment. He will have a decided bent of mind towards God, a hearty desire to do his will. And this is the part that stuck out to me, a greater fear of displeasing God than of displeasing the world.
Oh, yeah.
Which I was like, well, when you put it that way, yeah, I guess I would rather have that. But then when you look at how I act or what I place value on or, how I judge myself in comparison with other people, like, well, clearly I have a greater fear of displeasing the world
Oh, yeah.
than I do of displeasing God.
Yep.
And I think when it's put that blatantly, comparing the two, you're like, well, there's nowhere to hide here. So I guess I screwed this one up.
Yeah.
Um, but it's, I think, really helpful to me, um, to remove all the ifs or buts. Well, what about, like the play the what if game? And if I just settle it down to like, no, 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 really, like, am I more afraid of displeasing the world than I am of displeasing God? Or am I more afraid of displeasing God than I am of the world? And that's going to really dictate a lot larger chunk of my life than I think most of us would recognize without thinking about it, right?
Mhm.
Like, I think that is a fundamental stance that we take, maybe without thinking about it a whole lot. When in reality, we should think a whole lot about it because it's going to dictate a overwhelming majority of how we interact with people, how we treat ourselves, how we treat them, um, you know, what we value, where
Mhm.
we get our value from, like just so much of how we live life can stem from that very decision. And I don't think I've ever thought about it that way before.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement, and I it you even say that, and it's like, you think about how much stress or anxiety people have, and I would say a lot of that probably stems from exactly what you're talking about in terms of I'm more concerned about pleasing the world or pleasing other people than I am God, and,
Yeah.
when you start to compare the 2, you probably like, "Oh gosh," and there's kind of there is an element of, other people are tangible and real to me, and God can often feel abstract and kind of, not so present, and it's kind of easy to go, "Well, I'm not gonna really see any consequences if I don't worry about pleasing God, but I'm gonna have a very real interaction with somebody tomorrow or whatever in terms of pleasing them," and so, uh, yeah, I think a lot of our anxiety can come from needless anxiety can come from pleasing others and pleasing the world. And the other thing to kind of shifting gears on this to me is just, being conformed by the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And when I think of being, renewing of my mind, I think it's being in scripture, it's prayer, it's discussing God, you know, engaging with other Christians and that sort of thing. And Um, I don't think there's anything inherently evil with binge watching TV or movies or whatever, but you think about the amount of time that you fill with media, whether it be binge watching or social media or whatever it may be, sports, the football games on Saturday and Sunday. of just the amount of time for me that I can spend on those things that are conforming to the world, and then how much time do I really spend seeking Him, uh, praying, reading His Word, and I do think we are transformed by spending time just reading Scripture. And I know for me that hours compared to minutes when it comes to those two things.
Yeah, for sure. And I often think too that I should say, in my experience, that when I have spoken with people that, don't believe, that are, friends or family, that oftentimes it is an intellectual appeal for why they don't believe.
Yeah.
And that oftentimes, spirituality can be seen as an emotionally driven thing, you know. Uh worship, people raising their hands, or you get to some of the charismatic stuff, right? Which, I didn't grow up in that realm, right? But like the juxtaposition is often, oh, I have intellectual um grief with God, the Bible, and faith, so I don't buy it. But if you want to, emotionally, that's your choice. And what I find here is, yeah, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. Like,
Yeah.
it's not shying away. Like,
Intellectual.
this is, bring your intellectual grief and let's talk about it, right? And um I find oftentimes in my discussions, so this is not a generalizing statement. This is in the discussions I have had with friends and family that have intellectual issues with the Bible and scripture. When we get to the points of I don't know, they are always 10 times more uncomfortable with it than I am, because the not knowing is the issue. It's not the I'm too smart to be a Christian, or I'm too smart, I can find holes in the Bible. It's when we get down to the brass tacks of I don't know and there isn't an answer to that question, that's where the issue is. So it's not an intellectual thing, it's a not knowing thing,
Mhm.
which to me sounds like control,
I would
right?
definitely agree, yeah.
And so I have just always found it fascinating that, us closed-minded Christians that, whatever. It's like, well, I'm totally okay with things that I don't know, because that leaves room for God.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
if there's if I can know everything, then I don't need Him.
Sure.
I can be a God.
Yes. Well, and, um, w recently, one of the things that kind of, um, helped me with this was, and I think it was a podcast that my wife was listening to. There was a question of how do, faith and doubt exist? Like, what's the relationship between, faith and doubt? And ultimately, the answer that was given, which I would say I agree with, is that, um, faith needs doubt, because if doubt doesn't exist, if doubt doesn't have an influence on your faith, then that's simply belief, you know? And that was really kind of revolutionary to me, of like, there are certain things that I believe,
Uh
and I
huh.
don't question it. I believe that, I believe in gravity. Much of the physical world can be explained, and there are certain things, and I don't have I don't have to have faith. Doubt doesn't come into my mind in a lot of things, but when it comes to my faith and my relationship with God, in order for it to be considered faith, there must be an element of doubt. And that was just like very like the light bulb went off for me of like, um, there's nothing wrong with doubt, and even the verse that just talks about working out our faith with fear and trembling. This idea of working it out, kind of back to your point of it being an intellectual thing. And the other thing I would even just challenge, I guess, our listeners, Christians that come across this, or anybody, is that, if you're so sure about what you believe and you don't ever have doubt and you're just so concrete in, you can't ever be wavered on something, um, why is that? You know? Like, why are you so sure of what you believe? Because I think sometimes there's an element of you're a bad Christian if you don't believe exactly what you're supposed to believe, if you don't have the right dogma, in that there's kind of I think there is an element of Christians being uncomfortable with just saying I don't know. Because if you say I don't know, then there's this like, well, you're a bad Christian. You don't really believe the way you're supposed to believe. And I'm not referring to you as I say that, but I'm saying
Right. No,
a
no,
very
I'm shaking
generic
my head because it's just like add that to the list of things church gets wrong.
yeah, I think it's quite the opposite that and I guess I am in particular just thinking of a moment that I had recently where I said, "Well, I'm kind of okay with saying I don't know on this particular topic." And then was quickly kind of pounced on by two um fellow Christians that had to prove to me why there was a right answer to this issue and why there was a right answer to this question. And I'm not even saying that there's not. I just found it was very interesting their discomfort with somebody saying, I don't know on this particular topic and not being okay with just going, oh, that must be where you're at spiritually, but feeling this huge need to set me straight and reveal the truth to me because there is, the right way to believe. So, anyway, didn't mean to go down that tangent.
Yep. It's all good. All right. And then the whole point of renewing our mind is that by testing, we may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect.
Hmm.
Which, how many times you've heard, if I only knew what the will of God was for my life,
Hmm.
present your bodies as a living sacrifice and be transformed by the renewal of your mind. A sound mind and a sound body, right?
Hmm.
That's what ASICS is, the shoe company.
Is it?
Yeah. Something something in corporo sante. It's
Oh,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
it's Latin.
I
I think
got
it's
what you're
Latin.
saying.
But yeah, it's a sound mind and a
Yep.
sound body. There you go. It's in the Bible.
Yes.
Treat your bodies as a sacrifice that will be holy and acceptable to God, and let your mind be renewed by the word of God and his truth. Then you shall be able to discern what is the will of God,
Hmm.
what is good, acceptable, and perfect. That sounds like a game plan to me, Dave.
It does. And I'm going to read from the message just a piece of this because I think it says, take your everyday ordinary life. You're sleeping, you're eating, going to work, and walking around life and place it before God as an offering. And that to me just sort of kind of brings it back to this concrete, we're not talking about over spiritualizing this idea of being a living sacrifice, but it's just truly taking every aspect of who you are and what you do and just going, God, it's yours. I give it to you and I present it to you. And I'm not very good at this, but I've heard friends just say, one of their daily prayers is, God, just use me today. Make me available to what you have today. And I think about how busy and how rushed I get throughout my day and need to probably do a better job of just saying, God, just help me to be present. Or how often I'm having a conversation with somebody and I'm not listening to them and I'm ready to get on to that next thing. And so yeah, I think this is a lot simpler than we make it sometimes, of just giving our everyday ordinary life to him and say, God, use me in that.
Indeed. Well, that's the end of the passage.
That was wonderful. I'm glad we went to 12.
Yeah, that was going to be a lot better than whatever happened if we talked about 11. That's for sure.
Yes.
But hey, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Masterclass. We appreciate your time very, very much. If you want to check out the show notes, you can go to supermegacorp.net/masterclass/145, or you can swipe around in your podcast app of choice. They will be there for you. You can also in the show notes find links to our email, to Dave's Twitter, to my Instagram, to our Patreon page, and also you'll see the phone number where you can call in either with questions or comments, or you can leave an intro or an outro for the show. But it's a cool way for you to interact with not just us, but other listeners, to add your voice to the conversation. And thanks to our patrons, of course. We appreciate you very much.
Yes.
Make the show profitable with no ads. Hey,
Hey.
there we go. That's what everybody wants, right? And um, I always feel like I should have some sort of like sign off thing, like and an inspirational quote or here's your hashtag leadership tip for the week. But I don't do that stuff. So all I will say is I hope that um, this conversation was beneficial to you, and that God was able to use whatever the heck we just said um, to bring something to you. So thanks again for your time, and we wish you a very lovely day.
Bye.
Bye.